Welcome everyone to today's online event hosted by the Chartered Institute of Architectural Technologists. My name is Joe Hyatt. I am chair of the CIAT Aspiration Group and also an architectural technologist at Connolly Wellingham Architects based in Bristol. Today we are honoured to have with us the 2021 winner of the AT Awards Student Project, Craig Gregory, in addition to Paul Laycock, who is the lead judge for the Student Project Awards and report, I believe. So this workshop is designed to guide and support you, provide you with top tips in putting together your submissions and give you an insight into what the judges are looking for in a winning submission for the AT Awards Student Project category. We will give both Craig and Paul 15 to 20 minutes each before fielding your questions at the end. If you didn't quite catch the Mentimeter, I'll post it in the chat, but if you want to field your questions through that, or alternatively, if you want to put them in the chat as well, that's fine. So before we jump into it, I will give a brief introduction. As many of you are probably wondering, what is CIAT Aspiration? You're probably all aware of what CIAT is, but not what Aspiration is. So CIAT Aspiration is the group dedicated to students, graduates and recently chartered members of CIAT. Our mission is encapsulated in our tagline, nurture, network and develop. We believe in nurturing talent by providing you with the support that you need to thrive as an emerging professional. And CIAT offers mentoring programs that connect emerging professionals to experienced technologists to foster those skills and exchange that knowledge between members. Networking is another important factor which is crucial for career development, and our events help you build a valuable community around you. Our group creates opportunities for building professional relationships, that sense of community and opportunities for future collaboration. And finally, one of the main aims of the Aspiration Group is to offer platforms and opportunities for learning and growth, boosting your confidence and hopefully contributing to you thriving in your career as an architectural technologist. So we are here for you as members, and by getting involved and stepping out of your comfort zone, you can truly benefit of what CIAT has to offer as an institute. If this is something that you are potentially interested in, I know there are a few of you here today and a few of you will probably be watching this back later. Please drop me a message on LinkedIn, or you can kind of find my email there as well. And yeah, I can talk to you more about it there. And I'll touch on more of what we have coming up towards the end of the event, but let's get started, shall we? So our first speaker is, it's my great pleasure to introduce Craig Gregory. Craig is a former student from Nottingham Trent University, where he earned his BSc in Architectural Technology and an MSc in Digital Architecture and Construction from 2017 to 2022. Craig's exceptional work has been recognised through numerous accolades, including the winning the AT Awards Student Project category in 2021, which he won for his innovative Eco-Quarter Sustainability Hub, which he will talk to you a bit about today. Currently, Craig is a digital design engineer at Anderson Green. Here he contributes to the visualization and creation of digital assets for the Defence Infrastructure Organisation's estates, showcasing his expertise in digital design and sustainable architecture. So please join me in welcoming Craig Gregory to share his insights and experience as a student and a previous winner of the AT Awards Student Project. Craig, over to you.
Okay, no, thanks very much, Joe. Yeah, I suppose to hire. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where to start with this. So, should we start with the posters or the design document we sent in as part of it?
I think the posters would be a great place to start.
Okay, then, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so just give us 1 second. So that's there. Okay, can we all see that at the minute?
Come through?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. Should we start on? So, would you prefer it as 1 page or 2 pages, just to show it as it is?
I think 2 pages is fine. Just zoom in to where you're kind of focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Trying to find the zoom button now. There we go. There we go. Apologies for that. You know, prior preparation and all that, but this is my submission that I gave towards the SciAT Student Awards. It was called the Eco Quarter Sustainability Hub, and it was a proposal scheme for the Nottingham Riverside. There's a little area along the riverside in Nottingham called the Trent Basin, and it was starting into a very large residential development. So when I first started this concept, I had the idea of there's going to be a residential development alongside the south side of Nottingham. So was there a way of potentially adding more to the community or adding more to this development itself? And the Eco Quarter was born. So the whole idea behind it was a large mass vertical farm that could be built within any urbanized area to help feed to help feed and grow local produce for the community itself. So the generic idea behind it was essentially to create a community built around this hub of sustainability and ecology, and also to allow them to be able to learn and where their food comes from. One of the main concepts that came from this was because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a lot of problems and implications with getting food and produce to certain areas of the world, of the country, of the nation. And so it was the idea of becoming a self-sustainable, self-located, centralized area that people could use. So with it being a vertical farm, the idea was everything could be grown there. It could be self-enclosed, closed circuit loop as well. So it would have plant material, plant vegetation being able to be grown there, to be recycled, and then continue in the growing produce areas and be sold on to the local community for a profit and a revenue, which would then come back into the system itself. There was a whole range of sustainable ideas put in towards it, and we'll look into them in more detail. But for instance, it was a passive house inspired, BREEAM aspects employed, and there was also sustainable urban drainage systems installed as well. So if we just very quickly go through the poster then, the first stage of the poster, I took on the idea of it being like a stage 1, stage 2 sort of ideology for the first poster. So we have the location and the basic proposal and scheme and aim of the overall Eco Quarter itself. So, for instance, giving itself information of its location, where it was, what it's about, a little quote from my design document, the overall site areas. So it's meter squareage, its ownership of previous owners, the clients who may be involved. So referencing this, Nottingham City Council, 2 startup vertical farming companies, and the Trent Basin Residential Community Centre. And then a bit more background itself, the global requirements for vertical farming, what are the advantages and the disadvantages and the limitations itself, a bit more, a bit more background as to why this scheme was being put forward. This was the selling points. So when we go back to our first poster, we are considering stage 1 and stage 2. Why is it here? Why is it needed? Why are you trying to sell this product to the client, basically to the next buyer? So this is what these 2 little squares were here on the first poster itself. And again, more selling points. So the key design factors for the Eco Quarter. So for instance, I had sustainability initiatives. So this was conceived of the rainwater harvesting, PV cells, sustainable materiality, passive house designs, passive solar gain. The whole idea was it was to be a closed circuit sustainable option for future buildings and neighborhood sustenance. Within the Eco Quarter, it had aquaponic, hydroponic, and I will always forget the third one, but the other type of vertical farming alongside a fish farming pool and bee honey harvesting as well. So the concept there was that it would all be located in one location for the local residents of the Trent Basin. The area in question was also a brownfield site, so it was completely overrun with concrete, pollution from previous sites, and the idea also here was to reinvigorate the local area and bring back ecology and biodiversity. There's a little bit of background research into this as to what was needed, how it could be improved, and what species have been pushed out of the local area. And then finally, a community ethos. Looking into the Trent Basin community pages, it was what did they want? How did they want this project to work? What were they looking for within their scope, their area of where they were going to live? And so that's a little bit more of a background information for myself as to why this project should go ahead. But again, finding all these key aspects and key design factors helped to design this project. So if we consider this to be a stage 1 for half of poster 1, and then the final part, stage 2 of poster 1, the conceptual massing, how would it look, how would it feel, how would it look, shape around the site itself, and just a few images to show, this is how it would fit, this is how it would sit, this is how you would do a bit of rough circulation onto site, into site. For instance, there's a large green area here, so there's concepts of external flower gardens and bike paths and sitting areas and rest areas. If you've ever been to places like Copenhagen, there's a lot of bike paths and rest areas and green areas where you can sort of go and relax and chill within an urban environment. So within my stage 2, I started considering aspects of that. A bit of Revit modelling to show how it would look, shadows cast onto the site itself, and just showing a bit of that to show your development itself, how you came to your final idea. So if we move quickly on to stage 2, so poster 2, this is still following on from a bit of a stage 2, moving into a stage 3. So this is more of the developed design, how it would work, how it would come about, the main key selling points, the main key aspects. And like previously mentioned, I mentioned at this stage the key components. So passive house, for instance, and the environmental strategies. So these are the aspects that we're going to sell the eco quarter. So if we just quickly look at the environmental strategy, with it being the inverted commas sustainability hub, the idea of using natural resources, natural elements, being able to use everything within the local area would help to maintain its low carbon cost and its demand on local infrastructure, power infrastructure and water infrastructure. So solar PV cells would attract obviously solar radiation, put electricity, and this then links back into a little bit of BREEAM points because the power from the PV cells would then not fuel, energize outside external lights. So there's a tick in that aspect. Rainwater collection. With the rainwater collection, the water would then go into a tank, which would then get purified a little bit, and that would be part of the toilet systems. So essentially, it would all flow through a continuous closed loop circuit into the water cisterns, flushing. I can't remember the word. Sorry, the water cisterns, water holder, and then that would then be used rather than using fresh and potable water sources. Heat recovery systems, obviously with a large glass facade, the glass houses itself and the growing rooms would get very hot. So the heat recovery system would take away the hot air and then be used as an energy source or chucked back outside rather than using an extensive HVAC air cooling system. Very quickly onto the passive house ideas. So I'm not passive house certified. I'm not BREEAM certified. But at the time at my uni education, I was just having a crack at it, or at least having a look into aspects of it. So again, when we come back to our posters or our submissions, if you are interested in something, add it just to show that you've shown a little bit more forward thinking rather than the building materiality. So I was considering, for instance, here the passive house, the U values, linear thermal bridging, air tightness, passive ventilation, just to show that there's other aspects towards this building to be considered and how I tried to implement them. And again, reference the sustainable and drainage system. So this was a part of my degree's research thesis, but I added it on as part of my overall project. So I did a research thesis into sludge drainage and then how to implement it into my overall scheme. So we considered grass swales, permeable paving, a detention basin, and this was all due to it being a brownfield site with previous polluted soil And then north of site, there's a big A road. So again, surface runoff, wash off from cars, pollutants, light industry, all heading into the Trent Basin. It was all interconnected. So again, showcasing this to show a grander, larger scale of how your site fits into the overall area. And it could be, like before mentioned, local, national, global, how it all fits together. The biodiversity, I did not do that as part of my degree submission, but I did do it as part of the SciAT submission. So towards the very end of my degree submission, I decided to do a very quick biodiversity assessment on the site. And after everything I've sort of just talked about, it worked. It sort of fitted in how to improve the local area, to improve the pollution rates, to make it cleaner, better, which in turn would then bring back local wildlife. And I think that was one of the main goals for Nottingham Trent Council as well, to re-green and reinvigorate the local environment itself. So again, it's just not quite the building itself, but look at potentially other external aspects of your project as well. At least that's what I did for this. So when it all came to ecology, sustainability, there were so many more aspects, so many different things we could do, so many different various routes, and just trying to find a few things to emphasize and prove that this scheme could work. We then go on to poster 3. So zoom out a little bit. So poster 3 is the beginning of the stage 4 construction package. So speaking to my previous tutors, obviously it was a very big project. We had 3 or 4 different areas to concentrate on. I concentrated on the growing rooms, so the actual vertical farming unit itself at this stage. But there was a shopping unit, HR and admin, local circulation, an education sort of centre, and a communal hub itself. Down here was like a potential, what do you call them? Like a farmer's market with a cafe on top. And if you just scroll down a little bit, 1, 2, 3 levels, and it just showed the very rough layout of how it would all work. So with multiple typologies of the building itself, I decided to focus purely on the growing rooms because it would have caused more issues to prove that it was all airtight, fireproof. There's a few other aspects back at that time I had to consider, but at this stage for SciAT, I concentrated purely on the vertical farming aspect. So consideration towards the spatial awareness of the vertical farming rooms. So it came to plant space allocation, workers circulation space, actual growing room space, toilets and welfare facilities, just trying to show how it would all fit together and the percentages to each type of room. A image of the structural elements. So it was to use a glulam and structural timber aspects with a concrete ring beam foundation. Some images to show how it would go together. So how the glulam would be connected onto the foundations itself and the ring beams. A nice little cut throughs to show it how it all gets built up in sequence. And then just very roughly, and I'm not M&E trained again, but another aspect, because from an architectural point of view, if you are considering this, it's another good thing to show that you have put consideration into your mechanical, your water purification, your battery storage for your PV cells. Where's it going to go? How's it going to fit into it? How do you access that? How do you replace that? And now looking back at this from 3 years ago, I realised that this plant room here it definitely won't work. Let's be honest, it definitely would not work, and it could be very hard to replace the items inside it. But again, at the time, the consideration towards these elements helped to show that I understood what was needed and then what more could be put into the project. A nice little site section just to show its idea of what it would look like with a bit of foliage, local buildings near to it. And that's just a little bit of a space filler. I'll be honest, that was a bit of a space filler just to fill in a bit at the end of the poster. So again, if you're struggling to fill the white space, find little aspects of these things, site imagery, concept imagery, nice 3D renders. But at the same time, when we go on to the final poster, you've got to have this type of context to sort of make it look good, but you can't bluff your way through it at the same time. So if we move on to the final poster, And this is where I think it all came into, well, one of the main reasons I think why I did so well at this stage. So it's the level of detail that was involved in the actual construction and the actual build-up. So if we just zoom in just a little bit, is that all? Yeah, there we go. So let's start from the bottom. That may be easier, I think. So if we start from the bottom, work our way up. I did a full perimeter section of the vertical farming of the vertical farming hub itself. So starting from the foundation and ground floor build up onto the external wall, onto then all the suspended floors with a glass facade and glass roof facade. So starting from the foundation, and like I previously mentioned, it's the level of detail that is involved. So how it would all go together, how it would all work, how it would all be interlinked. So within my foundation perimeter detail, it was how does the ring beam connect to the pad the pad foundations, how it would then connect into the structural elements, how the glue lam connection pieces would then be connected onto the foundations, how the span floor cassettes would then be connected onto the foundation and the glue lam wall itself, the build up of each component. And like previously mentioned, Passive House was heavily influenced in this design. So we had our concrete, our 300 to 400 mil sort of I do apologise, I can't remember what type of insulation it was, but it was the white polystyrene packaging sort of insulation. Now that isn't eco-friendly, I understand that, but the amount of insulation involved helped to create a good U value for that floor, so that retained a good thermal barrier and thermal envelope around the whole building. This was then placed onto glass rock, I believe. No, foam glass insulation. So again, we've got that interconnectivity between one insulation piece to another insulation piece, and then edge perimeter insulation, which then links into another piece of edge insulation, and then around it and up it. And it's just, so we just show as architecture technologists at this stage how we have created the envelope itself. And this is what this whole project and scheme was about. How do we create an air tightness, a well insulated, a dry, and efficient building design? And I'm Joe, I'm happy for these to be shared if you wish at the end of the lesson, end of the presentation. But without going into proper detail, it's just the amount of information I feel that went into it, and without making people look at it in their own time, I'm not quite sure what more to talk about at this stage.
No, I think that's incredible, Craig. I think there's certainly a lot to talk about. So it's kind of knowing where to stop and start. But a kind of quick question before we move on to Paul.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of information here. How much, where did you start when you putting all of this together?
I will admit, I think it was a bit of a build up from year 1 and year 2 as well. So over my uni course, I sort of had built up like a logbook or a resource booklet. So certain materials I used like in year 2 or year 1, I then copy pasted them over. But then at the same time, I was trying to find a lot of aspects towards Passive House. So for instance, here, if we can see the water tightness and the air tightness, I was just typing in for materials that would that would either equate to or be efficient enough for Passive House. So there's a lot of material hunting, I think, towards the stage 1, stage 2 areas.
And was that done as part of your course, or is this done after your submission?
No, this was part of my course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's an incredible amount of work there, Craig. So it's very impressive.
Yeah. It was a couple of late nights, I'll be honest with that. So yeah.
Great. We'll leave it there then, Craig, and we'll come on to Paul, who will talk about how Paul would judge a project like Craig's and what they kind of look for generally. So Paul, so next up is Paul Laycock, who is lead judge of the AT Awards Student Project and Report. And for those who don't already know Paul, Paul is a chartered architectural technologist and chartered builder. He spent a number of years as a site manager for a major contractor and as a director of his own practice, specialising in healthcare buildings. Now, Paul is deputy head of College of the Built Environment at Birmingham City University, where he leads a team of over 50 academics. Paul has been involved with CIAT at national and local level, serving on numerous committees and groups, and he's currently Vice President of Education, sits on council and the executive board member, and he's also led the accreditation events for the Institute at college and universities in and beyond the UK. And in almost 2 decades of panel assessments and interviews, Paul has represented the Institute's interests for many hundreds of applicants. Do you know the number at all, Paul, or is...
It's a difficult one. I've asked her out a number of times for an actual number. She just comes back and says, probably most of them.
Yeah.
Same as the accreditation. I asked Nora once how many accreditations they've done. I think she said all of them, Paul. But it isn't all of them. I do know that. But no, it must be hundreds by now of applications I've overseen, both at application and interview.
That's incredible. As mentioned, Paul is the lead judge of the AT Student Awards for both project and report. So he's been lead judge for the last 3 years, and has been involved before then too. But he's keen to support every student at every level to enter the awards, and that's why we're kind of here today, to kind of encourage students to submit their work and contribute to architectural technology and be recognised for that. So, Paul, over to you.
Joe, thank you very much for today. I think this is invaluable, actually, and thank you for inviting me. More than happy to share all of my experience, etc., with anybody that will listen. So hopefully many of you will be listening to this numerous times and looking at. I mean, Craig, that was excellent presentation as well. That was a really good presentation. You actually complement and sort of reinforce almost everything I'm going to say here, coincidentally, as we didn't practice this. So really good teamwork, coincidentally. But absolutely, Joe, this is invaluable. We need to do this every year in the future. Okay, so in my experience of sort of judging these, I've sort of come up with not a formula, but you've always got these top tips, these things we are looking for. Firstly, it's a mix of judges look at these projects. It's a mix of academics and practitioners. So really, as applicants here, you need to structure your application for the audience you are submitting to. So it is practitioners, it is academics, it's both sides. So nice rounded submission, technical as well as design focused. It's also competition, treat it as such. Demonstrate exceptional levels of skills, exceptional levels of knowledge. So put your all into everything you put on here, above and beyond what you would generally find as a day-to-day sort of industry-based sort of production of drawings, specifications, etc. You really need to demonstrate skill and knowledge to be one of the winners. Size doesn't really matter. Okay, if anything, we get a number of large projects, and there's often way too much to cover. I think, again, Craig, you demonstrate this more than adequately. You focused on a smaller part of a large project and did that to a considerable level of depth, exactly what we're looking for. So if you have a large project, if your university project was a large one, and you had to cover that whole project as part of your project for your submission, for this submission, focus on a smaller part of that, go into depth, technical depth, aesthetic depth. You cover many and all parts of that part of the building, and that will help you to demonstrate a good level of technical competence. But equally, too small, and there won't be really enough there to provide a good entry. We have actually had some good entries from residential projects, but these will need to be something special, and enough scope of interest, unusual brief, unusual level of technology, unusual requirements, innovative in many ways, or a real focus on a sustainable project, something outside the norm. Your standard semi-traditional construction, unlikely to be a winner there. Okay, so if it is residential, we won't exclude it, don't exclude it, but really it needs to be an exceptional project. Just to reinforce what you said though, it is for everybody, this project. Level 4, 5 and 6, years 1, 2, 3, or part-times year 1 to 5 or year to 6, depending on the university. So at all levels, I would encourage all students to submit their projects. They will each be judged on their own merits, not just final year projects. Very importantly, I think, Greg, you emphasised this, the project must be technically competent. Okay, we're not expecting every detail to be resolved, and your university project should not and will not expect that also, but every project must have a level of good detailing. Also, it must be possible, probable, buildable. Those are some of the criteria for the project, so all that must be covered. Remember, these are sort of publicly, the winners will be publicly facing documents, sort of published by CIT as examples of project winners. We are a technical institute, and we need to demonstrate we are sort of awarding technically competent projects. We've had some good ones in the past which have had just a glaring error, something that's unresolved that was just too prominent. So on that basis, we had to exclude those in favour of a well-rounded, technically possible, well-resolved overall project. But something that may not have the best detail, but overall a good project. Remember, these will be featured publicly. We need to be seen to be awarding good overall possible projects. Link to the above, as I said before, demonstrate excellence in technology knowledge and detailing. Again, as Craig did there, I really liked the way you showed that facade, Craig, and then broke that down into a series of details down there. All the judges are technologists. We are technology obsessed, and we have long conversations about things like the number of bolts for the steel frame, the location, the number of washers used, real things, real technical discussions, just proving we all really need to get out more. But these conversations are important. We do look for these details and the details within the details. Now, following on from that, try to make these details as technically as possible, go above and beyond, as I said before. It's back to demonstrating that exceptional level of technical competence, knowledge of materials, and how those materials indeed fit together, produce a technically competent, possible, and probable building. Okay. Avoid also these generic statements we sometimes use in industry, to engineers design, to the design of others. Try and avoid those where possible and focus on where you've got the knowledge of those details and able to truly resolve those into a good, technically competent detail, linking those together to produce that possible and probable building. Don't plagiarize. We have seen a number of buildings that have been very similar to those existing in the world around us. The judges indeed come from all over the UK and outside the UK also. And we have excluded a couple of buildings that have been too close to existing ones. We all have a good and historic knowledge of buildings technology around the world. So make sure it is substantially your own. Precedents, other buildings should inspire but not be copied. Okay, a very important point there. So some general comments there. Moving on to the layouts. Again, Craig ran through his there. There is a brief released with this project. Try and stick to that. Try and stick to what we're asking you to display. So what you may need to do, as Craig did, is evolve your submitted work for your university projects into our brief. Make some changes, make some alterations, form those to our brief. Again, tell that complete story we are looking for. That story is important also. Again, as Craig's did, they were sequential. They told the evolution, the story of the building. We will always look for that. It should provide us with a view into the development from early stages, some concept work, through that final resolution of those details. Should be logical, sequential, not just as we sometimes get just a collection of images that sometimes are difficult to relate to each other and difficult to follow through from a start to an end point, difficult story to follow. Avoid that dead space. Again, Craig, you mentioned this really, really well. Avoid that dead space. Avoid leaving white space. Also avoid filling it with unnecessary images. We get too many images which are too much sky, a flock of seagulls flying past, and then a non-technical picture of the building there. Avoid that. Get as you did, Craig. If you need to add a little bit extra, make that space count. Add something to that image which shows it's a different aspect, the layout, the streetscape of that building as you did there. So again, make every square millimeter, every word of your report, make it all count. You are limited in there. Make that all count to get yourself extra sort of credit with the judges. In doing that, use a variety of media. Include sketches. Make sure they're well scanned or very good photographs. Demonstrate a variety of skills going forward. Not just sketches, not just AutoCAD, not just Revit, not just whichever package you use a variety of, use them all well. Demonstrate a good range of skills, something employers are looking for also going forward. Okay, moving on then to your 1,000-word report. Stick to the words count. Very important. Craig, your sort of submission's a few years older now. I did notice, and some of you may have noticed, a QR code in there. I think maybe after 20 or maybe it was 22, we were starting to get too many of those QR codes in there. And as judges, we came to an agreement we would not allow those in future. They were starting to overwhelm with the amount of information that were being added. The full poster and the strict word count in there. So for this year into the future, we will not be looking at anything included in QR codes or hyperlinks. So really, it is an exercise in sticking to that brief, describing your project within those 1,000 words and the visual space you've got there. Sticking to the 1,000 word, while background to the project is interesting, keep it brief and link that text to the background you're putting in your posters also. Keep it very focused. Don't let it overwhelm the technical aspects. And make sure that 1,000 word addresses all 5 criteria for the awards. Okay. While you can't use hyperlinks and QR codes, please do use some additional images to illustrate points, add to that narrative, but the narrative, the words must drive and lead that report, and then reference those additional images in there to emphasize, illustrate, add to points. So it needs to be a good balance of all of that. I mentioned those award criteria. There are a number of criteria there. Just eyeing my clock there, trying not to go over time, Joe. So I'll cover these quite quickly. And I think I'll focus first on the health and safety one. This is often the one that some students struggle with a little bit. They're addressing the health and safety aspect of this. What I will say is, look at what's happening in industry at the moment this year. We've just released our PD register. Fire is a key safety issue for the industry, and it will be going forwards. We aren't expecting a design engineer's level of risk assessments throughout the work, but please pay attention to a well-resolved, safe solution for fire for your building or part of a building if it's a much larger complex. Good safety features will be noted and will be discussed. Mitigation of hazards will be noted within your design. So make sure overall it's well resolved without us expecting an excessive level of really advanced engineer level technical detail. So a good overall resolution. Buildability and assembly, performance and durability, get a good possible building, something that could be built without any of those glaring errors we mentioned in the past. Again, we have to publicly display these designs. Functionality, inclusivity, and remember, inclusivity isn't just providing ramps. It needs to be a well-resolved, accessible building, inclusive for everybody to enter, use, and function properly in there. And lastly, I'll just cover design and presentation. Design of the building should be good, well thought through, and well presented. Back to one of my original sort of statements there. Tell the story of the building from initial ideas, resolution of initial design brief, right the way through to the details of the final design to make the building technically competent and possible. Okay, I hope that's given some good top tips. I have some notes around this, which I'll pass to Joe, and Joe, you can publish them as part of this exercise. Hope that was okay, everybody. Happy to take more questions later. Thanks very much.
That was brilliant. Thanks, Paul. So that kind of, ends the event today. We do have an opportunity for some questions. I've got a few questions of my own, so if we start there, and if anyone wants to put any questions in the chat, we can kind of field them as well. And just so everyone's aware, this will be on the CIAT YouTube channel, so if you want to watch this back later, feel free to do so. Yeah, one question I had was about the kind of text. So obviously you have 1,000 words which accompanies these boards. How much of that text is replicated on the boards themselves? Like, I know there's a lot of text, technical text, I guess, in the details for your boards, Craig, and a lot of, I guess you're explaining a lot of the concepts in relation to it. How much of that just then kind of condensed and summarized on that 1,000 words? Was it directly influenced? Were you talking about something separate on the text that accompanied it?
So on the process itself, I kept them as like technical notes, but in the submission, how do I phrase this politely? I proper dumbed it down. It's just literally point A to point B, and it does this and it does this, and it's amazing because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the text is selling the building, referencing the technical element on the display boards. If you're replicating, you're wasting space, you're wasting words, you're wasting space on your board. So really make it complementary. Description, this is why it's great, this is what I've done, this is why I did it, is the text. This is it on the boards. This is technically why it's successful, why it's good.
Great, that makes sense. And you mentioned the, I guess, images of the building. You know, everyone loves to create a visualization or try and communicate their building in a lovely visual. You mentioned that doesn't want to dominate a board in any way. You kind of want to show your building, but don't make it a whole of one size board. What kind of advice can you give in terms of what's the kind of correct amount of visualization to help communicate the design whilst also not still providing that technical information too?
I think I was given information via my tutor, so obviously it's like not quite an eighth, but something like a percentage of the board was all given up. I'm not sure whether Paul has an actual document somewhere you may have handed over.
There isn't, no.
No.
I'm just trying to think if we've given any advice in the past. I don't think we've given explicit advice, or I certainly haven't given explicit advice in the past. Certainly not in the forum for the awards. For my students, if I see more than 20%, we have a very similar sort of setup for our final submission as the AT project, which helps because it allows sort of a first draft really. And we comment on that. We comment on that. This is what you need to do for that submission. I think we say around 20%. If we've got more than 20% of strict sort of just visual, then it's a little bit of a waste of the opportunity to be technical.
Because that's what I'm thinking. I think my tutor said, here's a layout, certain percentage. So yeah, I think similar thing. Yeah.
You probably find that's common across all universities. I say the better ones, that there'll be a similar sort of advice level, and even where you are used. I mean, Craig, you sort of added to your strict visuals with elements to explain the building in context, to show in the landscape, which was brilliant. I think, as I said, we get a few which have like a small picture of the building with lots of landscape, loads of sky and clouds, and a flock of seagulls flying past. really you're wasting a lot of space there. That space is so valuable for getting extra technical content in. Really, you can't afford to waste it.
No.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely made that mistake when I submitted back in 2019. But so yeah, it's good to know. And yeah, so from what I understand, it's about the kind of low quantity, good quality visuals. It's not about putting multiple, you can create renders now just at the push of a button. So I guess it's about making sure they're quality and they're adding to the story rather than just for the sake of showing another visual. Paul, when you kind of receive all these projects and applications, how do you kind of quantify and mark them against each other? Is there a kind of marking criteria which is quantified, or is it? Yeah, can you explain that?
Yes, we have a marking sheet which Adam very kindly produces for us every year, and we put it's. Adam, you have to remind me here, is it a 1 to 5 scale initially for each of the marking criteria?
Yes, that's the matrix, yeah.
The marking matrix is a 1 to 5 scale against the marking criteria. And then we individually as judges, and he said tutors there, judges, go through, we write our positive and negative features, it's by far the overwhelming amount of information we produce. We use the 1 to 5 scale as just to initially arrive at a hierarchy for ourselves. And those 1 to 5 scales are based around the 5 criteria, which are published on the part of the AT website, the CIAT website that covers the AT awards. So we mark them there. Then we put extensive comments, positive, negative, about the awards, and then we come together. We sort of discuss our sort of top 3, top 4, top 5, depending how the marking's gone, and then it invariably, not one of us, our top 1, 2, 3, or 4 becomes the actual one. It is an open discussion. We discuss the individual merits of the different projects, and then we reach an agreement for everybody. Now it's often nobody agrees the top 3 initially, as I said, but we come to an agreement as we exchange views, we exchange our experiences. Sometimes we say, well, actually, this is a little bit too much like a project I know, or I've seen this glaring error I mentioned. This isn't really possible here for this reason. It's often a structural reason, and we feel we have to discount something like that because we are a technical institute. We can't really be promoting something that isn't really possible. But yeah, it really is an open discussion, all this, and we'd come to a consensus across all the judges. It often gets heated, but we're all professionals. We all agree at the end of the day.
I'd like to, see those discussions.
I'd like to sit in one of those meetings as well.
Yeah,
Craig, you're both very welcome to. Both very welcome to. It's good to have your experience.
Craig, when you were at university and you were doing your kind of studio project, did you always have in mind that you wanted to submit for the AT Awards? Was that no?
Honestly, I generally came to a point, I think, what are we in now? May. I was like, it's good, but I don't think it's that good, if that makes sense. And then my tutors pushed me and a few others to do it. So I think I'm going to jump ahead and answer a question here. If it's a question of, do you think it's good enough to do it? Just have a crack at it. So that's what my mentality was. Yeah,
absolutely. I would love to see every student submit. In a way, it would give me much more work, but in a way, I would love to see every student submission. I know that all the other judges, this is one of the highlights of our year. Just seeing what you're doing out there, seeing the innovation, the technologies, all the examples you bring forward, and great balanced projects like that one, Craig. Excellent. We always get really good submissions every year. Sadly, the last couple of years, I think we're still suffering a little bit from the COVID output. Sadly, the last few years, we fell off a little bit number of submissions. Hoping with this year, another promotion, we're trying to push that number up so we get good high-level submissions and a good number of submissions this year. So it really is a highlight to see what you're all doing out there. Again, all years as well, Joe. I'll emphasize that. first year, second year, third year, level 4, 5, and 6, whatever it's called at the different universities, how it translates to different countries. If you're doing a design project, please submit. If you're proud of it, we'd like to see it.
Yeah. Do they? I guess they need to be compared, against each other. So a kind of final year submission needs to be compared fairly against a level,
Yes.
like a first year submission. Yeah. So it's not, you don't take that into account in the judging process.
We don't. No. We choose the technically best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to honest, it's our degree show at Birmingham City today, and it was yesterday. I've just this morning viewed some level 5 or second year full-time projects. Some of those are exceptional. And actually, I'd looked at, I'm not judging the level 4 project this year, but I looked at some level 4 projects. I was literally dragged up to look at these because they were so good. And some of the drawn work there, it's better than some of the professional assessment submissions I've seen over the years. Yeah, the level of students we're now starting to get in is exceptional.
That's great to hear, for sure. Great. I think that's all the kind of questions I had. Is there? I don't think there's tons more. I've kind of touched on any other points, but that's been really useful. Thank you both for your time today.